My name is Kathleen Cunningham. I'm the Executive Director of the Village Preservation Society of East Hampton, which is a not-for-profit 501c3 organization committed to historic preservation in the Village of East Hampton and its surrounds. This year we have a historic election for our village board, and I'm conducting a series of conversations with the mayoral candidates. I'm going to start with Trustee and Deputy Mayor Barbara Borsack, who's kind enough to join us today. Given the VPS ordinarily does a different kind of a debate with our candidates, but with the pandemic, we really weren't able to organize what we generally do. So we asked all of the candidates to fill out a questionnaire, which is on our website, and I urge our viewers to take a look at the Village Preservation Society website. You'll see village election over to the right. If you click on that, you'll see all the names of all the candidates. And if you click on those names, you'll be able to read the questions and answers that each of the candidates were kind enough to provide for us. So I'll start by thanking Barbara Borsack for doing such a thorough job on your questionnaire. But because we've already dealt with many of the issues that are relevant to the Village Preservation Society, its members and trustees, I thought today we could have a little more informal conversation and just kind of, my goal today is to pretend like I'm a newcomer in town and get a little more information about you and your opponents in a more personal way, a little more philosophical rather than issues-based. It's been a very issues-based event. The election has been very issues-based. So I'm just going to offer a couple of questions, Barbara, and ask you to just talk about things a little bit, if that's okay with you.
Sure, absolutely.
Just conversation starters. So start by asking, how would you characterize your relationship with the village, and how long have you lived here?
I've been here my whole life. I think my family goes back at least 5 generations on this property where I live, and where the family still owns 4 houses on this property.
Right.
The family business was right across the street. It was a blacksmith shop, and they were among the early settlers here. Not the earliest, but they were here, quite early, and were very active in settling East Hampton. I had, great-grandfather who was a town justice and on the town board, and they were very active in civic affairs. So it's kind of a family thing for me.
Okay, well that's interesting. So how do your feelings about the village influence your concept of governance?
Well, I guess because I've lived here all my life and listened growing up to conversations. My father had a business here in the village, so I was always very cognizant of that balance between residents and businesses in the village. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I raised my own children here. So I think the village has been so much a part of my life. I can't imagine not living here. Right. It's just part of who I am. I think it's really a part of who I am.
Right. Oh, great. Thanks. So this is a sort of a fantastic idea, but if you could wave a magic wand, what would you change about East Hampton?
Well, I'd love to get rid of some of the traffic. I tell people all the time, when I was 5 years old, I walked from here, which is on Accabonac Road, up to Newtown Lane to kindergarten. Right. Every day. Can you imagine letting a 5-year-old cross North Main Street? North Main Street I had to cross. I mean, when my children were growing up, it was impossible. I had to take them up and cross them if they were going to go across. So it's a very different place than it was, when I was growing up. But I think that gives me a nice sort of feel for the best of the village. What's the best about a community, and because everything changes, we can't keep things the way they were forever. In the 1950s, they're not going to be the same forever. Right. Every place changes. But I think that gives me a good sense of what's the best about East Hampton, and it's community. It's the community that makes it what it is, and the people that make it what it is, and the people that make the government what it is. I mean, it's people who really care about the community that make a difference here.
Right. Well, that sort of leads into my next question, which is what do you value most about the Village of East Hampton? But I suspect you've just told me that. And unless you have something you want to add, I think we've covered it.
No,
But
I love it. It's a great community, you know, no matter how many residents there are, there's still a wonderful core community of people who love this place and who work hard for it and give of themselves and, you know, give back to the community in wonderful ways. You know that because you do it yourself. So it's just something that, you know, is part of who we are. And that's what makes it a great place.
right. Well, thanks. How would you describe the village to a newcomer?
Oh boy, that's an interesting one. To a newcomer, I'd say it's a community that's very diverse in certain ways, not in other ways. It's economically very diverse. It's in terms of people's backgrounds, it's very diverse. I have friends who've been here for 3 years. I have friends who I grew up with. I have friends of all kinds, you know, in the village. And I find that invigorating. I love meeting new people that have come here and hearing their stories and what brought them here and learning about who they were and where they came from. I think it's an exciting place to live. I really do. Especially being so close to New York City. We get a lot of that influence here, which is in terms of culturally, it's very exciting and it's nice to have that influence right here.
Right.
I think it's an exciting place. I really do. I love it. It's not a sleepy little town. It's a nice, exciting, vibrant place, I think.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good. Thank you. What is your vision for the village?
I think my vision for the village is always to maintain the great quality of life for the residents. I think we sometimes forget that the village is 90% residential. You know, some people tend to think of it as just the commercial district, which it's not. It's a huge residential community, and the residents need to be protected. They need us to always be thinking about issues like traffic and noise and construction, all those things that happen in a busy place. So my vision is to protect the residents, to make sure it continues to be a great place to live. We don't want to be the generation that kills the goose that laid the golden egg. We want to be the generation that protects it and continues to make it a great place, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you. So in your view, what are the most important characteristics of an effective leader?
Well, I think there are different kinds of leadership, and I think they can all be effective depending on the person. Right. My leadership type is more consensus building. I like to work with community groups. I love committees. I love hearing from a lot of different people, what their opinions are, and getting ideas from a lot of different people. So I believe in consensus building. I think that's very important, and that's my leadership style. Other people have different styles, and I think any of them can be effective if they're done well.
Okay, that's a good answer. Okay, so here's the here's the big question. Why the office of mayor and why now?
Well, it's a kind of a natural step for me because I've been on the board of trustees for 20 years now. There have been things over those years that I would have liked to have seen move forward that maybe didn't, and I would be in a position where I can move some of those things forward now if I'm in the office of the mayor. And I think it's just. I just love East Hampton so much, and I want to make sure that it's protected. And so for me, it's making sure that it's in the hands of somebody who loves it that much and is more in this for the village than for any other reason.
Okay, thanks. That's a good answer. Okay, so switching here a little bit, what is one of your favorite historic places in the village and why?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard one because, you know, I've been on the board of the Historical Society for over 30 years, so I love all of the historic sites. I mean, that's one of my favorite things. I love Mulford Farm. I love to walk around there. I love Home Sweet Home. I guess I would have to say Mulford Farm because it's like a little oasis in the middle of one of the busiest places in the world. But that whole historic district there, I think, is very special. I love walking along that sidewalk there and going from one to another and seeing the houses. Even, all of Main Street, I think, is very special.
Right.
So, but if I had to choose one, I mean, Hook Mill, of course, I live in the shadow of Hook Mill, so I love Hook Mill. And I love the cemetery behind Hook Mill. There are just so many great spots to explore. But if I had to pick one, I guess it would be Mulford Farm.
Okay. Sorry to pressure you. It's really more,
That's a hard thing.
Yeah. No, it is. It's hard, especially for someone that's been as involved as you have. But, I'm trying to ask these questions from the point of view of someone that doesn't know anything,
Well,
so.
at least you kept it to the village, because if you said the town, that would make it much more
That'd
difficult.
be much worse. Yes.
I had a great grandfather who was the lighthouse keeper in Montauk.
Is that right? I don't think I knew that.
That's a special place for me. I love to go to the lighthouse. I always feel like I'm going back to the old homestead, where my great.
Yeah, that's great. That's one of the first places we always take our guests and say, this was commissioned by George Washington.
Right.
Anyway.
It's a great spot.
Yeah. Okay, so we're switching themes again here. What percentage of the village tax base is residential and what percentage commercial?
Oh gosh, I don't know the answer to that. Not the tax base, I don't know. I know that 90% of the village is residential.
Residential, okay.
About 90%, but I can't tell you a percentage in terms of tax base.
Right.
I think it might be more than that residentially, but
yeah. Well, I think it would probably.
I don't want to give you a number that's wrong, and I don't
understand. Yeah. Well, so that's. But the fact that you said it was 90% residential, this leads into the next. I've got a little set of questions here that are relative to that.
Okay.
How does that proportion really of residential to commercial affect your the decision making when the need arises, if there are conflicts between those constituencies, between
again, I think
commercial needs.
I did address that a little bit. I mean, I think the residents' needs have to come first.
Right.
But as I said, I grew up in a family that had a business in the village, so I understand the balance. We have to take care of our commercial core, and I think the residents want us to. I think the residents want a vital commercial core, but I think we always have to be aware of where the boundaries are and how we protect the neighbors around the commercial core. Right. So I think that's sometimes a challenge, but then the residents have to come first.
Right. Thank you. How do you frame the problem of expanding commercial interests in the residential districts?
How do I frame the problem? I would not want to see that happen. There's, as far as I'm concerned, that should never happen. Right.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I guess to put some perspective on it, Airbnb and VRBO, those tend to be sort of, and listen, I'm not against people renting their homes for, within the regulatory framework, but we know that there's more frequency, and actually it does kind of commercialize the residential area as a practical matter, It
really turns it into a hotel zone is what it does. That's not fair to the residents. So we have been actively looking at companies that come in and work with us to identify all the homes that are being rented out. This is what they do. We pay them a fee per property.
Right.
We've interviewed a couple of them. That's something that I think will probably be in place by next summer, so that we can control what's going on in the neighborhoods. We do have codes in place now that people are only supposed to rent their property for two-week periods in a year. And we know that's happening much more frequently than that. So what we have to do when we decide to hire one of these companies is the first thing we have to do is decide, is that the way we want it to be? Is there any change we need to make to the code We think that's fair, 2-week periods, and that's something the board will have to discuss. And then this company will be sort of the police department, if you will. You know, they'll be keeping track of what's going on and watching the rentals and actually sending notices to people who are not in compliance, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So that's something that I absolutely agree. We can't have that out of control.
Thank you. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think of the outside dining in the commercial district? It's been a new feature as a result of the pandemic, and I have a feeling that people are liking it. I wondered what your sense of it was.
I think some people like it. I've heard from other people who don't like it. So I think it's a balance. I think that we can allow some outdoor dining. I don't think it should be on the sidewalks where you have to have pedestrian access. There are ADA issues. I don't think it can be necessarily down where the cars are like it is now, because I think there's a danger there as well. But I do think that if there's sufficient space on property like at Rowdy Hall, we can say, for instance, Rowdy Hall has plenty of room out there on their property for tables. I have no problem with that, and I think the code can be changed to make that possible.
Okay, thanks. So switching again, I know the village has been investigating a sewage treatment plant in order to potentially increase the wet uses in the village. But I know also that from the Village Preservation Society's point of view, the water quality issues have been very serious for the whole East End, the whole of Suffolk County, really. And the village was aggressive in adopting a very a good model law for low nitrogen systems and the criteria that needed to be met, or when those that need was triggered. But the sewage treatment plant that's been under discussion for quite some time, I think people are wondering how that will be paid for. I know that, finding a place for it is another matter altogether, and we won't touch that here, but I was wondering about the cost of that and how might those fees be generated.
Well, they are very expensive. There's no question about it. But there is grant money available, both federal and state grant money that's available that can help. And now we recently, as you know, with CPF money, community preservation funds, we now have access to some money through community preservation funds. So I think there are avenues for funding it. There will be, of course, fees every year for people who are using it.
Right.
So, I mean, that's all still to be explored. We're in the process now of trying to figure all that out. But we'll find a way to do it.
Right.
We'll find a way to do it. I think it's important. It's important to our ponds. I mean, really, the water quality is huge. And I think our residents understand that, and they want to protect the ponds as well, Hook and Town and Georgica. We all know what's going on there. So
yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. So in light of the coronavirus, how do you see village government providing for the needs of what seems to be an expanded year-round population?
Well, I think it remains to be seen what needs to be done. I think we're all in unknown territory. And we don't know how long it's going to last. Are they going, are some of these people going to return to their other homes in the spring, and this will be a 1-year phenomenon? I think are going to have to play by ear, which we've been doing since March.
Right.
Just kind of had to take things as they come and try to problem solve on the run, because that's what's happened. We're in completely uncharted territory.
Right.
And none of us have any experience with it. So it's about our residents. It's about their health and safety, and doing whatever we can to make sure that that's guarded.
Right.
So I can't project, because I don't know what those challenges are.
I understand. Yeah, I understand.
We'll deal with them when they come. We'll deal with what we have to deal with when the time comes.
Right. Okay. Then sort of corollary to this is, with beach access in such high demand, Why is the village still selling non-resident beach permits? I think that was something that some of my people were curious about.
Well, that was done before the pandemic. I mean, we had
right.
So we monitor very carefully every summer how many times all the parking lots are full. We look at that every year. We've been very careful about how many non-resident beach stickers we sell for that reason. It wasn't that long ago when there was an unlimited number sold. Right. And then we put a cap on it. And then we watched carefully, and then, you know, a couple of times we changed the number because, okay, well but then, you know, with free ride now, we find that the parking is not in as demand as much. And we opened up lot 1 after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So any village resident can use lot 1 exclusively. Non-residents cannot use that. We have found with the daily parking, and we've really been fine with parking. I mean, this year is like no other year. We really can't compare that. I haven't even gone to the beach this year because I know what the parking issue is, you know. I mean, we tried to go at night at one time and there was no place to park. So, you know, I think this is not a year that we can really use as an example. We've been very careful about the parking, and if we had to limit non-resident parking, we would certainly do that. I mean, it's all about the residents. They're the ones that pay for the maintenance of the beaches, but that income is also important too to the village. So, and that helps keep our taxes lower. Yeah. So sorry about that. We have to keep that balance. Thank you. And so I have one more question here because we're getting close to 20 minutes, which is amazing. I know it goes fast. Really fast. With the benefit of hindsight, is there anything in your professional life that you look back on and wish you had done differently? Oh, of course. I mean, doesn't everybody have things they wish they'd done differently? I mean, of course. You don't want specifics, do you? Well, no. I just lost the time. I don't know. No, I know. I mean, I know it's sort of a personal question, but to my mind, it reflects the ability to, be reflective about one's professional life. Certainly there are times in my own, experience, and I thought, oh, I should have done X instead of Y. And I think with respect to an elected official, it's just good for people to know that folks think, I should have, that you have the capacity to reflect and say, yes, I have made some mistakes and I wish I had done something differently. No question about it. And, there are times when you say, okay, that's never going to happen again. Right. Next time we'll have a public hearing. Next time we'll, because things do happen that, none of us, and we do the best we can, but, we're going to make mistakes. That's just human. So, and so much of what we do is projecting. I mean, we're trying to assume, what's going to happen, and it's not always what happens. No, that's right. That's right. And we have to, either go back and change things or do better the next time. Right. Right. Okay. Well, I think that we're about at the end here of 20 minutes, and I want to thank you so much for sparing some time for us. And I wish you luck in the campaign going forward, and good luck with the rest of the campaign, Barbara. And thanks a lot for your time. And thank you for organizing this. This is great. I'm hope you enjoyed it. I sure did. Yeah, I love talking to you, Kathy. Okay. We've been for a long time, so. All right. Thank you, and have a good evening. Right. Bye now.